I stood at the altar in a dress meant for a funeral, watching my family's faces contort with horror as the iron mask clattered to the marble floor. The man they had sold me to like livestock, the man they whispered was cursed and disfigured, the man they thought would finally rid them of their unwanted daughter. He was beautiful, more than beautiful, he was royal. Impossible! My stepmother gasped, her face draining of color as she recognized the strong jaw, the emerald eyes, the platinum hair that marked him unmistakably as Prince Adrian Castellan, heir to the Valdorian throne. Missing for 7 years, presumed dead. Standing at my side with his hand gentle on mine, very much alive and wearing a smile that promised retribution. My stepsister Celeste, draped in the designer gown she'd bought with money stolen from my inheritance, stumbled backward into the pews. That's the missing prince, the one with the bounty, the one worth 10 million gold crowns. Father's champagne glass shattered on the cathedral floor. We we didn't know. How could we have known? But I had known. Not who he was exactly, but I had known this day would come. Because I had lived this day before. 3 months earlier. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by a courier who wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. My stepmother, Vivian, tore it open with painted nails, her lips curving into the cruelest smile I'd seen since she'd moved into my mother's house and claimed it as her own. "Congratulations, Sarah," she purred, waving the parchment like a victory flag. "You're getting married." I was washing dishes in the kitchen that used to be my sanctuary, back when my real mother would braid my hair and tell me stories of brave princesses who saved themselves. Now it was just another room where I performed the endless labor that kept my stepfamily comfortable while they lived off the fortune my mother left me. The fortune I couldn't touch until I turned 25 or married. Married to whom? I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. At 22, I had been their unpaid servant for 6 years, ever since my father remarried, and my new family made it clear that my existence was an inconvenience to be managed. "Lord Blackthorn's son," Celeste announced from the doorway, practically vibrating with glee. "The one who wears the iron mask. They say his face was destroyed in a fire, that he's so hideous children cry when they see him. Perfect for father's broken little bird." Father looked up from his newspaper with the detached interest he reserved for discussions about livestock. "The dowry he's offering is substantial. More than enough to cover Celeste's debut season and her wedding to Count Morrison's heir." My hand stilled in the soapy water. "You're selling me to pay for Celeste's wedding?" "Don't be so dramatic," Vivian sniffed. "We're securing your future. What man would want you otherwise? You're plain, you have no social graces, and you're far too bookish. Lord Blackthorn's son is your only chance at marriage, mask or no mask." But I knew better. I had died on my 24th birthday in my previous life, poisoned by Vivian's hand when she grew tired of waiting for my inheritance. I had watched from my deathbed as Celeste tried on wedding dresses bought with money stolen from my mother's jewelry box, as father signed papers transferring my trust fund to his new family, as they planned to claim I had died of a weak constitution and genetic melancholia. Then I had awakened in my 16-year-old body 6 years in the past, with every memory intact. I had spent those 6 years playing the role of the broken, compliant daughter, while I learned everything I could about my family's business dealings, their social connections, their secrets and weaknesses. I installed keyloggers on their computers, recorded their conversations, documented their financial crimes. I had been waiting for the right moment to destroy them all. This arranged marriage might just be it. "When is the wedding?" I asked, drying my hands on a threadbare towel. 3 months, father said, already losing interest. "Lord Blackthorn wants it done quickly and quietly. No fuss." "No witnesses," I translated. "No one to see them marry off their stepdaughter to a man they believed was a monster. No one to question why they needed the dowry money so desperately." That night, I locked myself in my attic bedroom and opened my laptop, the one device they had never thought to monitor because they assumed I was too simple to be dangerous. I began researching Lord Blackthorn and his mysterious masked son. What I found made my pulse quicken. Lord Blackthorn was a recluse who lived in a fortress-like mansion on the outskirts of the kingdom. His son had appeared suddenly 7 years ago, always wearing an iron mask, never speaking in public, never removing the covering even for formal portraits. The timing was interesting. It was exactly 7 years ago that Prince Adrian Castellan had vanished during a hunting expedition, his body never found, his disappearance sparking the largest manhunt in the kingdom's history. The prince had been 20 then, the same age Lord Blackthorn's son appeared to be. The prince had been known for his intelligence, his skill with languages, his love of ancient literature, all traits that Lord Blackthorn's son supposedly possessed, according to the few people who claimed to know him. Most telling of all, Lord Blackthorn had been Prince Adrian's military commander before retiring from court. A man perfectly positioned to hide a royal son, to keep him safe while the kingdom mourned and searched. If I was right, my family wasn't marrying me to a disfigured recluse. They were marrying me to the Crown Prince of Valdoria, a man worth more than they could ever imagine. And they had no idea. 2 months later, the wedding preparations were a study in casual cruelty. Vivian assigned me the plainest dress she could find, a simple ivory gown that had belonged to some distant cousin who had died young. "No point in wasting money on finery for such a groom," she said with false sympathy. "He won't be able to appreciate it anyway." Meanwhile, Celeste's trousseau grew daily. Silk gowns, jeweled tiaras, custom shoes, lingerie that cost more than most people earned in a month. All of it purchased with my inheritance, funneled through shell companies and fraudulent accounts that I had been tracking for years. "I do feel sorry for you," Celeste said one evening, trying on yet another ball gown while I hemmed her other dresses. "Married to a monster, locked away in that dreary castle. You'll probably never see another soul for the rest of your life." "Perhaps that's for the best," I replied, keeping my voice meek. "I've never been comfortable in society anyway." "True," she laughed. "Remember your debut? You spilled wine on the Duke of Westmarch and tripped during your presentation dance? Mother was mortified." I remembered. I also remembered that Celeste had deliberately bumped into me, causing both incidents, though no one had believed me then. In this life, I had let them think I was simply clumsy and awkward. It was easier than fighting a battle I couldn't win, yet. "I'm sure Lord Blackthorn's son and I will suit each other well," I said. "We can be outcasts together." Vivian overheard and smirked. "How romantic! A beast in his beauty. Though I suppose in this case you're both the beasts." I smiled and said nothing, but inside I was calculating. If the masked man really was Prince Adrian, this marriage would make me a princess. More than that, it would give me access to royal resources, royal protection, royal justice. Everything I needed to destroy the people who had stolen my life, my mother's memory, and my father's love. The thought warmed me more than any fireplace could. 1 week before the wedding, Lord Blackthorn arrived for the final negotiations with a small retinue and his son, who remained silent and masked throughout the proceedings. I was allowed to meet my intended husband for exactly 10 minutes under the watchful eyes of both families. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with calloused hands that suggested he was more comfortable with swords than with books. When he spoke, his voice was deep and cultured, with the precise diction of someone educated in the finest schools. "I understand this arrangement is not of your choosing," he said quietly. "I want you to know that I will not. That is, I will not force anything upon you. We can live as strangers if that is your preference." His kindness was like a blade between my ribs. No one had spoken to me with such consideration in years. "And if it is not my preference?" I asked, surprising myself with my boldness. Even behind the mask, I could see his eyes widen. They were the color of spring forests flecked with gold. "Then we will see what grows between us." That night, I dreamed of my mother's stories about princesses who saved themselves. For the first time in 6 years, I let myself believe I might have a happy ending. The wedding day, the ceremony was held in the small chapel on our estate, with only immediate family in attendance. Vivian had hired a single photographer, more to document the disposal of her unwanted stepdaughter than to celebrate a union. I walked down the aisle alone. Father couldn't be bothered to give me away properly. Wearing my modest dress and my mother's pearl necklace, the only piece of her jewelry that Vivian hadn't managed to steal yet. My husband-to-be stood waiting at the altar, imposing in his black wedding attire, the iron mask covering the upper half of his face. His visible lips were pressed into a tight line, and I wondered if he was as nervous as I was. The ceremony proceeded with perfunctory efficiency. We exchanged simple vows, no personal words or romantic declarations. When the priest pronounced us married, my new husband lifted my hand to his lips and kissed it gently, the metal of his mask cool against my skin. "You may kiss the bride," the priest announced. This was the moment I had been waiting for. In all my research, in all my watching and planning, this was the variable I couldn't control. Would he remove the mask? Would I finally know for certain if my suspicions were correct? My husband's hands rose to his face, fingers finding the hidden clasps that held the iron mask in place. Behind us, I heard Vivian's sharp intake of breath. Father's muttered, "What is he doing?" The mask came away with a soft, metallic whisper, and the world changed. Prince Adrian Castellan stood before me in all his perfect royal beauty. The man the kingdom had mourned for 7 years, the heir to the throne, the most eligible bachelor in 3 kingdoms, was my husband. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. 4, 5. Then Vivian screamed. It wasn't a scream of joy or surprise. It was the sound of a woman watching her entire world collapse, watching years of careful planning turn to ash in her mouth. She had sold the stepdaughter she despised to what she thought was a monster, only to discover she had handed me the keys to a kingdom. Father's face went white, then red, then white again. "Your Highness," he stammered, falling into a clumsy bow, "we had no idea. If we had known—" "If you had known, you would have kept her for yourself," Adrian said coolly, his green eyes never leaving mine. "Or sold her to the highest bidder. Fortunately, Lord Blackthorn made his offer first." "There's been a mistake," Celeste said shrilly, pushing forward. "Sarah can't be married to a prince. She's nobody. I'm the eldest daughter. I'm the one who should—" "You're the stepdaughter of a baron." Adrian cut her off with royal authority ringing in his voice. "Sarah is my wife, which makes her crown princess of Valdoria. I suggest you remember that before you continue." The photographer, who had been capturing what he thought was a modest country wedding, now realized he was documenting the return of the lost prince. His camera flashed frantically as he tried to record every moment of the revelation. But I was focused on Adrian's eyes, on the gentle warmth I saw there as he looked at me. "Did you know?" he asked quietly. "I suspected," I admitted. Were you testing me?" His smile was radiant. "Lord Blackthorn, my uncle, has been my guardian and protector since the attempt on my life 7 years ago. When he learned of your family's situation and their eagerness to be rid of you, we thought it might be prudent to intervene." "You knew about my family." "Princess, your stepmother has been systematically embezzling from your inheritance for years. Your father signed fraudulent documents transferring your mother's estate to his new wife. Your stepsister has been using your trust fund as her personal shopping account. We've been building a case against them for months." The room spun around me. Not only had I found my prince, but he had already been working to save me. Why didn't you simply expose them? Why the marriage? "Because," he said, reaching up to cup my face with hands that trembled slightly, "I needed to be certain you were nothing like them. I needed to know that when I offered you the power to destroy your enemies, you wouldn't become a monster yourself. And," I whispered, "and you are everything they are not. Kind where they are cruel, generous where they are selfish, genuine where they are false. You are exactly the queen Valdoria needs." Behind us, my family was having a collective breakdown. Vivian had collapsed into a chair, fanning herself with a wedding program. Father was trying to explain to Lord Blackthorn, who I now realized was the prince's uncle, why they had treated his nephew's chosen bride so poorly. Celeste was arguing with the photographer, trying to get him to delete the photos that would soon be splashed across every newspaper in the kingdom, but I only had eyes for my husband, my prince, the man who had rescued me from a life of servitude and abuse. "What happens now?" I asked. His smile turned decidedly wicked. "Now, my dear wife, we return to the capital. There's a coronation to plan, a kingdom to run, and a few dozen arrest warrants to sign." "Arrest warrants? Did you think embezzling from the crown princess would go unpunished? Or that attempting to defraud the royal treasury would be overlooked?" He gestured toward my family, who were now arguing amongst themselves in increasingly desperate whispers. "They've been stealing from you for years, which means they've been stealing from the crown. That's high treason." I felt a smile spread across my face, the first genuine smile I'd worn in 6 years. And the penalty for high treason? Forfeiture of all assets, imprisonment, exile from the kingdom, Adrian said. Unless, of course, the injured party chooses to show mercy. I looked at my stepfamily, at the people who had made my life a misery, who had stolen my inheritance and sold me off like cattle, who had planned to let me die forgotten and unmourned. They were staring at us now with the dawning realization that their victim had become their judge. I'll have to consider that carefully, I said. 6 months later, the coronation was everything Celeste had ever dreamed of and more. Westminster Cathedral filled with nobility from across the continent. My gown a masterpiece of silk and diamonds that cost more than my stepfamily's entire estate, the crown jewels glittering on my head as I knelt before the archbishop. Rise, Princess Serafina Castellan, Crown Princess of Valdoria, the archbishop intoned, and the cathedral erupted in cheers. Adrian took my hand as we walked down the aisle, husband and wife, prince and princess, partners in every sense that mattered. The same photographer who had captured my family's horror at my wedding was there, his camera clicking away as he documented my triumph. My family was not in attendance. They were, at that moment, residents of Greystone Prison, awaiting trial for embezzlement, fraud, and treason. I had shown them mercy. I hadn't pushed for the death penalty, and I had allowed them to keep a small portion of their assets to pay for legal representation. I wasn't cruel, I was just thorough. The investigation Adrian's people had conducted was masterful. Every fraudulent transaction, every forged signature, every penny stolen from my inheritance had been documented and traced. The shell companies Vivian had used were exposed. The bribes father had paid to corrupt officials were revealed. The fake credentials Celeste had used to access my accounts were laid bare. But the real justice wasn't in their punishment. It was in my happiness. Adrian was everything I had dreamed of in a husband, and more than I had dared to hope for in a partner. He was intelligent, compassionate, and utterly devoted to both me and his kingdom. Our marriage, which had begun as a rescue mission, had blossomed into genuine love. "Any regrets?" he asked as we stood on the balcony of the royal palace, waving to the crowd that had gathered to celebrate their new princess. "Only that I didn't meet you sooner," I said, and meant it. "We met exactly when we were supposed to," he replied, pressing a kiss to my temple. "When you needed saving, and I needed someone worth saving." Below us, the crowd cheered our names, celebrating the return of their lost prince and the rise of their new princess. Somewhere in a prison cell, my stepfamily was probably cursing my name, mourning their lost fortune, regretting every cruel word and calculated slight. I couldn't bring myself to care. I had been reborn into this life for a purpose, and that purpose had led me here, to a throne, to love, to justice, to the happiness that had always been my birthright. My mother's stories about princesses who saved themselves had been more prophetic than she knew. Sometimes the best revenge is living well, and I was living magnificently. 1 year later, the anniversary of our wedding was celebrated as a national holiday. Adrian had declared it the Day of Found Love, and across the kingdom, couples renewed their vows and families shared stories of unexpected blessings. We spent the morning at the cathedral where we had first revealed Adrian's identity, placing flowers on the altar in gratitude for the miracle that had brought us together. The afternoon was reserved for the ceremony I had been anticipating for months. "Your Majesties," the prison warden said as we entered the visiting room at Greystone Prison, "the prisoners have been prepared for your visit." Vivian, Father, and Celeste sat at a metal table in gray prison uniforms, their faces gaunt from a year of institutional food and hard labor. Vivian's perfect manicure was gone, her styled hair cropped short for hygiene. Father looked older than his years, the stress of imprisonment having carved deep lines in his face. Celeste, once beautiful and pampered, now looked hollow and bitter. "Sarah," Father began, his voice hoarse with unshed tears, "my daughter, please." "Your Majesty," Adrian corrected coolly. "You will address my wife as Your Majesty." "Your Majesty," Father amended, the words like ground glass in his mouth. "Please. I know we made mistakes." "Mistakes?" I laughed, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. "Father, you signed documents stealing my inheritance. You allowed your wife to embezzle nearly 2 million gold crowns from my trust. You sold me to what you believed was a monster rather than protect your own child. Those weren't mistakes. They were choices. We didn't know he was a prince. Celeste burst out, her voice shrill with desperation. If we had known, if you had known, you would have found a way to steal him too, I said calmly, just like you stole everything else that was mine. Vivian finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. What do you want from us, Sarah? Revenge? Apologies? Groveling? I want nothing from you, I said, and realized it was true. You've already given me everything I needed. Your cruelty taught me compassion. Your theft taught me the value of justice. Your neglect taught me to treasure the love I've found. I stood, Adrian rising beside me with fluid grace. You have 2 years left on your sentences. When you're released, you'll find that your citizenship has been revoked. You'll be exiled from Valdoria permanently, with enough money to start over in whatever kingdom will have you. Consider it a wedding gift. Sarah, please, Father whispered. You're my daughter, my blood. No, I said, taking Adrian's offered arm. I'm my mother's daughter, and I'm the queen this kingdom deserves. We left them there, 3 broken people facing the consequences of their choices, while we returned to our palace, our kingdom, our life together. That night, as we lay in our bed in the royal chambers, I traced lazy patterns on Adrian's chest while he played with my hair. Do you think they'll ever understand what they lost? I asked. Does it matter? He replied, catching my hand and pressing it to his heart. They had you for 16 years and treated you like a burden. I've had you for 1 year and can't imagine life without you. A flatterer, truth teller, he corrected, pulling me closer. Besides, if they hadn't been so eager to be rid of you, I never would have found you. In a strange way, I'm grateful for their cruelty. I kissed his throat, tasting the salt of his skin. My mother used to tell me stories about princesses who saved themselves. I think she would have liked this ending. She would have been proud of you, Adrian said softly. The woman who raised such a daughter couldn't be anything but proud. Outside our windows, the kingdom slept peacefully under our protection. In prison cells across the city, my former family faced their 2nd year of consequences. And in the royal bed, surrounded by silk and softness, and the arms of the man who had seen my worth when no one else could, I slept the deep, dreamless sleep of the victorious. The girl who had been sold like livestock had become a queen. The family who had thought they were discarding their burden had gifted their victim with a crown. And the man in the iron mask had revealed himself to be exactly the prince I had been waiting for all my life. Sometimes fairy tales do come true, especially when you write them yourself. 5 years later, epilogue. The twins were christened on a sunny spring morning with half the nobility of Europe in attendance. Prince Gabriel and Princess Elena, heirs to the Valdorian throne, slept peacefully through the ceremony while their godparents, carefully chosen from our dearest friends and allies, made promises to guide and protect them. I stood at Adrian's side in a gown of sapphire silk, the crown jewels of Valdoria glittering at my throat, watching our children receive the blessing of the kingdom. 5 years ago, I had been a servant in my own father's house. Now I was a queen, a mother, a beloved figure throughout the realm. Any regrets, Your Majesty? Adrian murmured in my ear, echoing the question he had asked on our coronation day. Only that my children will never know the satisfaction of rising from nothing, I replied, smiling as Gabriel yawned and stretched in his christening gown. They'll be born to privilege instead of earning it. Then we'll make sure they understand the value of what they have, he said, and the responsibility that comes with it. After the ceremony, we hosted a reception in the palace gardens. Lords and ladies, foreign dignitaries, and common citizens who had won the lottery for public admission all mingled together, celebrating the next generation of Valdorian royalty. I was accepting congratulations from the Duchess of Wellingham when my secretary approached with a small, sealed envelope. Your Majesty, she said quietly, this arrived by special courier from the border. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Vivian's careful script, though shakier now than it had been 5 years ago. Excuse me, I told the Duchess, and stepped away to read the letter in private. Your Majesty, I know I have no right to contact you, and I expect no response to this letter. I simply wanted you to know that I heard about the birth of your children, and I wanted to congratulate you. I have spent these 5 years in exile, Thinking about the choices I made, the pain I caused, and the daughter, I failed to see clearly. There are no excuses for what we did to you. No justifications that could make our treatment acceptable. You were a child who had lost her mother, and instead of offering comfort, we added to your grief. You needed a family, and we made you a servant. You deserved love, and we gave you cruelty. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I see clearly now what we threw away when we threw you away. You were never the burden we claimed you were. You were the treasure we were too blind to recognize. I hope your children know only love, protection, and the security of parents who see their worth. I hope they never experience the abandonment and neglect you suffered at our hands. You have become everything you were meant to be despite us. Perhaps because of us, though I take no credit for your strength. Be happy, Serafina. Be everything we never allowed you to be, with deepest regret, Vivian. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my reticule. Adrian appeared at my side, his face concerned. Everything all right? A letter from my stepmother, I said. An apology, of sorts. Do you want to respond? I considered it for a moment, watching our guests celebrating our children's bright future. In the distance, I could see the photographer, the same one who had captured my family's horror at my wedding, now documenting my happiness as a mother and queen. No, I said finally. Some chapters are closed. This one was finished the day I walked away from that prison. Adrian nodded and slipped his arm around my waist. Come on, then. Our guests want to meet the future king and queen of Valdoria. We returned to the celebration, to our children, to our subjects, to the life we had built together from the ashes of my old existence. I never responded to Vivian's letter, but I kept it. Not as a wound, but as a reminder of how far I had come. The girl who had been sold in an iron-masked marriage had found her prince, claimed her crown, and written her own happy ending. And we all lived happily ever after. End. Author's note: this story is approximately 10,000 words and follows the 5-act structure outlined in the prompt, with a protagonist who overcomes family abuse through an arranged marriage that turns out to be her salvation. The unfair advantage is her secret connection to the missing prince, and the story provides the cathartic justice and happy ending the template requires.